Well, welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast. We explore the big ideas, practical strategies, and insights to help you grow and lead more effectively. I'm your host, Charles Good, and today we're diving into the book Think Again with Adam Grant, a book that challenges us to rethink what we know, embrace intellectual humility, and become more adaptable thinkers. Because in a world that rewards confidence and certainty, Grant makes a compelling case for why we should value the ability to rethink, unlearn, and change our minds. Today, we'll break down those key takeaways, how they apply to leadership and decision making, and how you can start thinking again in your own life. So whether you're a leader, an innovator, or just someone looking to sharpen your thinking, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. Let's be honest, being right feels amazing. There's nothing quite like that victorious moment when you confidently drop a fact in a conversation, watch everyone nod in agreement, and think, yep, I'm basically a genius. The problem, sometimes we're just confidently wrong. Adam Grant points out that we live in a world where confidence is rewarded. We're taught to have strong opinions, stand our ground, and defend our beliefs. That's great, until it isn't. Because the world is constantly changing, and clinging to outdated knowledge is like refusing to update your phone because the old version was fine. Think about all the things people used to be sure about. People once believed that tomatoes were poisonous, that Pluto was a planet, that Blockbuster was an unstoppable business. And yet, here we are, eating ketchup, living in a world where Pluto got demoted, and streaming everything because Netflix was willing to rethink what the movie rental business should be. So, believe it or not, the smarter you are, the harder it is for you to rethink your beliefs. Now, you might think that sounds like an insult, but don't take it personally. Take it as an opportunity. You see, the problem isn't intelligence. The problem is that smart people are really good at defending bad ideas. If you're a lawyer, a debater, or someone who enjoys winning arguments at Thanksgiving dinner, you probably know exactly what I mean. So instead of seeking the truth, we often seek validation. We want to be right more than we want to be better. Adam Grant explains that most of us slip into three mental traps that prevent us from rethinking. First is the preacher mode. That is when we defend our beliefs as if they are sacred. You know, that person who refuses to believe pineapple belongs on pizza. That's the preacher in action. The next mode is the prosecutor mode. Here, we're focusing on proving others wrong rather than examining our own views. This is your classic, I'm right and you're an idiot mindset. The third frame is the politician mode. This one's all about seeking approval. Instead of focusing on what's actually true, we say what sounds good to keep our audience happy. And then there's the fourth mindset, the one that we should be adopting, which is the scientist mode. Unlike the preacher, the prosecutor, or the politician, the scientist doesn't get emotionally attached to their opinions. Instead, they test their beliefs, just like they test a hypothesis. And if evidence changes, well, they change their views as well. So here's the real takeaway. Detach your identity from your opinions. You're not your political views. You're not your job title. You're not your favorite sports team. If you define yourself by what you believe rather than how you think, you'll never grow. And let's be real. If you haven't changed your mind about something important in the last year, you're probably not learning enough. Now let's talk about confidence, specifically misplaced confidence. You know, that one friend who suddenly becomes an expert in epidemiology after reading one Facebook post. Or the uncle who's convinced you he could run the country better than the elected official despite struggling to operate his TV remote. That's the Dunning-Kruger Effect in action. It's the delightful psychological phenomenon where people who know the least tend to be the most confident. Basically, if you know nothing about something, you don't even realize how much you don't know. It's like being the first rung of a very tall ladder and thinking, wow, I can see everything from up here. But here's the scary part. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to fall into this trap in certain areas. That's because, once again, intelligence often helps us recognize patterns, but it also means you're better at justifying your incorrect assumptions. In short, smart people sometimes end up using their intelligence to build better excuses for their ignorance. So, how do we escape the Dunning-Kruger trap? Ask yourself, could I explain this to a 5-year-old? Be willing to say, I don't know. And surround yourself with people who will challenge you. Because real intelligence isn't about knowing everything, it's about knowing what you still have to learn. Now, most people hate being wrong. It's uncomfortable, it's embarrassing, it makes you question everything. But here's the twist: being wrong is actually awesome. Adam Grant argues that the goal isn't to never be wrong, it's to recognize when you're wrong faster. Because the faster we realize we're wrong, the sooner we can get less wrong. And the problem is our inner dictator. What do I mean by this? Well, when someone challenges a core belief that we have, our brain treats it like a physical attack. We get defensive, we shut down, we start arguing like a lawyer trying to win a case instead of a scientist trying to find the truth. This is thanks to what psychologists call the totalitarian ego, or our inner dictator, that hates admitting fault and loves self-justification. It protects your self-image by feeding you comforting lies, like, you were totally right about this. This study that contradicts you, it's probably flawed, and anyone who disagrees is just uninformed. So how do you embrace the joy of being wrong? Well, detach your opinions from your identity. Act like a scientist, not a preacher or a prosecutor. Scientists don't fall in love with their ideas, they test them, and when experiments fail, they update their thinking. And seek out intelligent people who disagree with you. If everyone around you agrees with you, you're in an echo chamber. Find people who challenge your assumptions, not just confirm them. Because as the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman says, being wrong is the only way I feel sure I've learned something. So the next time you realize you're wrong about something, don't freak out. Instead, celebrate it. Because every mistake is just an opportunity to upgrade your brain's software. So let's be honest. Most of us also suck at handling conflict. A lot of us like to avoid it altogether, saying things like, I'm fine, everything's fine, just let's pretend that it didn't happen. While others go nuclear over minor disagreements. How dare you like pineapple on pizza? But here's the thing, conflict isn't the problem, it's how we handle it. There are two types of conflict. The bad type, which is relationship conflict. This is when disagreements get personal. Instead of debating ideas, people start attacking each other. The other type of conflict, the good type, is task conflict. This is when people challenge ideas, not each other. They argue passionately about the best solution, not about who's right. The best teams don't avoid disagreements. They lean into them in a productive way. So how do you argue smarter, not louder? First, frame disagreements as debates, not fights. If someone says, I disagree, our natural instinct is to dig in. But if we say, hey, let's debate this, then we more likely will engage with curiosity instead of defensiveness. Second, surround yourself with disagreeable givers. These are the people who challenge you not because they enjoy arguing, but because they want to make you better. Think of that brutally honest friend who tells you that your haircut isn't working for you. And three, embrace the illusion of explanatory depth. Ever noticed how people who claim to be 100% sure of something often struggle to explain it in detail? That's because we all think we know more than we actually do. The next time you argue with someone, ask them to explain how something works, because at the end of the day, healthy conflict isn't about proving who's right. It's about getting to the right answer together. Now let's talk about winning arguments without fighting. If you've ever tried to convince someone they're wrong and ended up in a shouting match or a stare down out of pure stubbornness, welcome to the club. Changing minds is hard, and it turns out that arguing harder doesn't actually help. It makes things worse. So let's break down how expert negotiators, aka people who don't throw plates at Thanksgiving dinner, handle debates differently from the rest of us. First, they find common ground. Instead of jumping straight into why that person is dead wrong, they start with agreement. Next, they ask more questions. The more questions you ask, the more someone has to think about their position. Instead of telling them they're wrong, get curious. How did you come to that conclusion? What evidence would make you change your mind? And three, They don't attack weak points, they build strong ones. Most of us use straw man arguments, tearing apart the weakest version of the other person's stance. Instead, expert negotiators use the steel man approach, strengthening the other person's case before addressing it. Why, you ask? Because it makes the conversation feel fair instead of a verbal fistfight. And here's a mind blowing fact: when people feel like they've been heard, they are actually more open to new ideas. So the next time you want to win an argument, stop trying to win and start helping them to think. All right, let's talk about why people love putting people into neat little boxes and why that's a problem. Have you ever met someone who says, "Oh, I can never be friends with someone who is this," or "All millennials are lazy," or "People from New York are just plain rude"? Stereotypes are mental shortcuts. Our brains love them. They save time and they let us process information quicker. But the problem is they also are sometimes wrong. Adam Grant explains that stereotypes don't just make us biased, they make us blind. We stop seeing individuals and only see categories. And once we form a stereotype, our brains filter out information that contradicts it. So, how do we break free from stereotypes? Here are three strategies. First, find a common identity. A study showed that Manchester United fans were more likely to help an injured rival player if they were reminded that they're all soccer fans to begin with. When we expand our group identity, biases shrink. Instead of thinking us versus them, we think we. Two, challenge your automatic assumptions. If you believe all Gen Zers are addicted to TikTok, go meet one who's launching a startup. And three, ask people about their experiences instead of assuming you know them. Instead of relying on stereotypes, just talk to people. You'll be shocked on how much you can learn by actually listening instead of assuming you already get someone's entire life story. At the end of the day, rethinking stereotypes isn't about being politically correct, it's about being accurate. And the more accurate we are, the better decisions we're going to make. Now, have you ever tried to argue with someone who just won't budge? No matter what the facts you present are, they dig in even deeper. It's like they've decided that changing their mind is a personal failure. Why does this happen? Well, it's called psychological reactance. When people feel like their beliefs are being attacked, they defend them even harder. So instead of arguing, try motivational interviewing, according to Adam Grant. And you can start practicing with this technique by using these three steps. First, start with curiosity. Instead of debating, ask them how they form that opinion. People love talking about their experiences. When they reflect on why they believe something, they sometimes notice the cracks in their own thinking. Next, get them to explain how instead of why. If you ask someone, "Why do you believe that?" they'll defend it to the death. But if you ask, "How would that actually work?" their brain shifts into problem-solving mode. They start rethinking their assumptions on their own. And finally, summarize their view before sharing yours. Instead of saying, "Here's why you're wrong," instead say, "So if I understand correctly, you believe X because of Y, correct? Right?" That makes people feel heard and less defensive, and that makes them more open to new ideas. Bottom line, the best way to change someone's mind isn't to argue, it's to ask. Most of us hate uncertainty. We want clear answers. We want to know if eggs are good or bad for us. We want to know if coffee is a miracle drink or a death trap. Overall, we want certainty. But here's the truth: certainty is a trap. Adam Grant calls this the binary bias, that tendency to divide the world into two extremes when the reality is way more complex. Instead of thinking yes, no, black, white, good or bad, we should be thinking it depends. So, how do we embrace uncertainty? First, look for complexity, not simplicity. Instead of thinking this idea is right and that one is wrong, ask, what am I missing in this conversation? The best thinkers add nuance instead of reducing everything into a Twitter argument. Next, stop seeing debates as two-sided battles. If an issue feels like it has two extreme sides, there are probably at least 5 perspectives in between. Instead of choosing a side, try exploring all of them. And then ask yourself, what would change my mind? If the answer is nothing, that's a sign that you're stuck in a mental trap. When we stop demanding certainty and start embracing curiosity, the world gets a whole lot more interesting. So, how do we apply rethinking to everyday life? Well, for individuals, make rethinking a habit. First, seek out information that contradicts your views. Follow people you normally would disagree with. Next, get comfortable with being wrong. Laugh at yourself when you make mistakes. It helps you learn. And then finally, start conversations by asking people what they've changed their mind on recently. That's a great practice to start doing right away. Now, for leaders, create learning cultures and do the following things. You need to encourage psychological safety. Make sure your team feels safe questioning the status quo. Abandon best practices. Strive instead for better practices and keep evolving those. Also, track rethinking, not just results. A smart decision-making process matters more than short wins. Here's the thing, if we don't make time for rethinking, we'll spend our lives stuck in outdated beliefs. Adam Grant himself schedules rethinking time every week, a time to question his own views, seek out new perspectives, and challenge his assumptions. What if you did the same? Set aside an hour a week to question your beliefs. Ask your challenge network what you should rethink, and get excited when you realize you're wrong. It means you're getting smarter. And remember, the smartest people aren't the ones who know the most. They are the ones who are willing to rethink the fastest. Until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and keep rethinking. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.